Hello, folks. So this week we're just going to go through a bit of an update on progress, and then there's a fair bit to talk about there actually, because a few things have happened, and then we're going to talk about smart homes and buildings, which there's lots and lots of material on, but we're just going to present a few simple things this week. Just for any new faces that have come to join us, I see there's a few people who haven't come before, so thank you for coming along. I don't know if you've maybe had a chance to see some of the other meetings that we've done and recorded on YouTube, but I thought I'd just run through a couple of quick facts that we ran through in our launch meeting to just set the context. So if that's okay, I'll start with that. And yeah, we are recording the session, so if you prefer not to be on the recording, then just turn your camera off, and please feel free to use hand signals or use the raise hand function in Zoom if you've got a question anytime throughout. So yeah, just to set the context why we're here. So this is a graph published by the website Carbon Brief, which has lots of really useful information on it. It's a graph of carbon emissions over time, and shows pretty easily how the carbon emissions have been creeping up. And since the turn of the century, when we kind of knew that it was an issue and things were starting to be highlighted, global emissions have actually just continued to rise. And we have, in order to stop the world heating beyond 1.5 degrees, which is what was agreed at the Paris Climate Summit in 2015, we have an overall carbon budget, which is basically the area under the curve. So this graph does a pretty good job of showing you that if we'd started cutting emissions in 2000, the gradual reduction would have been fairly, much more manageable than it is today, when we're up here and we need to reduce far more quickly than before. So and in Scotland, the situation is bad in one way but good in another. So our personal carbon emissions are 10.3 tons of CO2 per person, higher than the rest of the UK, and 20 times higher than someone who lives in Nigeria. So the good news is we actually have a lot we can do about it in Scotland, much more in the way of sort of means. But the overall conclusion is that we need to try and reduce our emissions by 10% per year starting now. And this is from a video presented at the Scottish Climate Assembly. So this chap is Professor Kevin Anderson, who's a climate scientist at the Tyndall Research Centre in Manchester. And he presented a lot of really useful facts, particular to Scotland. You can find a copy of this video in the launch presentation that we did. And if you just Google Kevin Anderson on YouTube, you'll find him, and that presentation's there. And in fact, so for those who maybe don't know, the Scottish Climate Assembly was run over the last few months, and essentially 100 members of the public in Scotland were selected at random and given a whole load of facts and information about climate change and how we're dealing with it. And then they were allowed to basically draw their own conclusions at the end of it, having taken all this independent information, and put together a strategy for government to try and follow. And since our last meeting, the Assembly, these 100 people, have published their interim report. And it's radical, I'd say, but it's really speaks to what needs to be done. And again, there's some YouTube videos that explain some of the findings that they've got online, so it's worth a look. So yeah, if you want to look at any of our previous meetings, just go to YouTube and search for Zero Carbon Daviate, and you can find our initial launch meeting and all the others. So yeah, where are we at the moment? So I've shown this once before, but this is the little organogram, if you like, that we put together. So far, from all the people we've talked to in the village, this is some of the different initiatives that have kind of come to the surface. So, you know, we've got a really great range of different things there. At the moment, we're basically trying to do different. So at the moment, we have 6 of us as trustees and a couple other people helping us with things. So like Natalie helped us with is helping out with the eco program for schools, and she did a climate treasure hunt the other week. We also have Charlotte in the village. She's helping build a website. So we're putting together a website where you can find the latest progress on projects and find basic information. But yeah, we thought we'd just give an update on a few of these tonight. So we're going to talk about outdoor access paths, renewable energy generation, and a bit about home retrofit. But yeah, if you've got ideas or suggestions or questions about anything else, then please pop them in the chat, ask us at any point. So Ken, would you like to talk about progress with paths?
Certainly, yes. So we found that during lockdown, a lot of people were out on their bikes and getting about and enjoying the freedom of being able to cycle. And quite a few of us managed to get down to Inverurie, but as the first lockdown ended, it just became not possible again. And one of the core things that we'd like to do with Zero Carbon Daviate is to try and encourage and help people get out of their cars and onto their bikes. But if you can't cycle safely to Inverurie, which is our main shopping centre, then it's very difficult to, you know, to be able to do that. So we teamed up with a group called Meldrum Paths Group, who had plans to put or to develop a path from Inverurie to Old Meldrum, and they were very keen to have our support because, you know, we can actually get to Lethenty on the wee small roads reasonably safely. But then once we get to Lethenty, you just look across and there's no way through at all. So what we've done is we've spoken to all these people here, all, you know, around the area throughout Scotland, and there's just a huge amount of support. And also folk that we've spoken to in the community would really like to be able to cycle to Inverurie. So we had a meeting week past Monday with Aberdeenshire Council, and they confirmed that the council has agreed with Malcolm Allen Homes to construct a path from the railway station across the floodplain, which is now known as Uriside Park. And then they'll put a new bridge in just below the new school at Uriside School across the Uri. And then from that side, they're going to build another path out to the Link Road. So we've got essentially a road from the station to the Link Road, and then we've got a means of getting down to Lethenty. So there's just a little bit of land in between. And the council have confirmed that they have got funds available to purchase land and funds available to actually put a path on top of it. So all that remains to be done is just to sit down with the landowners and see which way we can come through, because there are several routes that we might take, and it just depends on how the negotiation with landowners go. So that's great news, really, and, you know, hopefully this time next year we'll all be able to bike into Inverurie. I think that's it. Matt, your next one. All right. So, am I going to talk about this, or would somebody else like to?
Don't mind. I mean,
yeah. Karen or
Yeah,
Nick?
go for it, Ken. You go for it.
All right, okay, right. So Karen and Nick have very kindly offered to manage some e-bikes that we've got on loan. We've got a 4-week trial coming up in 4 weeks' time. I think it is 3 weeks' time, 4 weeks' time. And we negotiated this with Meldrum Path Group and a group in Udney with Huntley Development Trust. And so our 3 groups are borrowing the bikes for a period of 2 months. But Udney are not ready to do it yet. And so just left the 2 groups of us to borrow these bikes. So Meldrum have got them now. So if anybody wants to go for an e-bike ride around Meldrum, then, click onto the Meldrum page, and you'll find them there. And then when they've finished the trial, we'll try it out for Daviet. And then in 2 months' time, we'll get together with them again, and we'll exchange notes and see, what was good and what was bad and how it all worked. So as it says there, it's starting on the 28th of April. We'll have them at the shop, and Karen and Nick are going to be looking after them. We will decide what's a reasonable price, but the idea is try and keep them low so that just everybody can have a go at them and see if it's for them or not. They'll be available for a daily hire during the trial. So as Matt said there, thanks to Huntley Green Travel Hub for loaning them to us. Okay.
Yeah, cheers, Ken. Yeah, so the next slide here was to briefly mention renewable energy generation. So, yeah, I think we've mentioned this before, but essentially taking a cue from what Huntley have done. So Huntley managed to, many years ago, install wind generators in Huntley that create a revenue, and for Huntley, it creates quite a revenue. The 3 wind turbines they've got projected to bring them an income of 3 million quid over 10 years. So we're kind of looking to a similar kind of model and looking to see if we could get wind generation here in Daviet to provide an income for other projects, and also obviously add renewable energy to the grid. So this all came about because Ken and I took part in a programme with Community Energy Scotland that gave us a grant of £2,500 and 8 days of one-to-one support with their staff. And their staff have been instrumental in other projects on the islands, and they really know sort of how to do these things. So we're now entering the one-to-one support stage with Community Energy Scotland, where they'll basically be looking at a feasibility study of installing some wind generation for our community. And that will include, how it connects to the grid, whether the grid's got capacity, what sort of funding we can get, that sort of thing. So yeah, we haven't. It hasn't started in earnest yet, but it's just about to, and yeah, we're on the cusp of getting a bank account set up to receive funds and start progressing.
Could I just jump in there, Matt, and say that just listening to you there, this is not going to be a wind generator in the whole car park. Feasibility study is, the community extends all around the village, and we just need to find a suitable hill somewhere nearby, maybe park it next to one of Mackie's or something. Who knows? But that's what the feasibility is all about. Sorry.
No, I knew I missed something, so thanks, Ken. So yeah, the next sort of big project we're looking at is home heating and home retrofit. So trying to hit the big hitters first. Home retrofit is, the carbon generated by heating our homes is really the largest part of our carbon footprint for most of us. So that's what we're looking to tackle in some way as well. Quite tangible, because if we can just eliminate oil and gas from all our heating, then that kind of works. So far we know that there's 450 homes in the catchment area that we've identified, and the average EPC rating is a D. across all those. So we're now trying to look at how we can decarbonize our heating in all those homes. Yeah, I think it's important to say here that you know, I think we've all probably done little improvements to our homes over the years, but being able to switch a heating system from an oil boiler to something like a heat pump, you can't just make the switch, because these systems output lower temperature, have a lower temperature output. Sorry, quite often we need to insulate our homes, but that's not a bad thing, because our homes can then keep us warmer and even further reduce our bills if we do so. But the level of insulation measures going beyond just simple double glazing or bit of loft insulation really needs to be thought about. And this kind of graphics shows it quite well. So this is a graphic, well, it's a tool, online tool created by the Sustainable Traditional Buildings Alliance, and it's actually interactive. So I think I can actually show you here. So this essentially allows you to click on one particular area and show what impact it has on other parts of the building. So for example, if I was to look here and to say floor insulation on top of existing floor finish, it will then point to all the other areas in the home that could be affected. So, you know, could affect your ventilation, what you need to consider in your ventilation, how your heating's distributed. You know, it will have knock-on effects for your doors, for your windows. You know, and similarly, if you change your heat generation source to an air source heat pump, then these are all the other things that are going to be implicated by that. So, you know, I'm not kind of putting this on the screen to scare people, but you know, as a trained passive house designer, I now understand how these things interact. And you know, building physics, as it's called, is quite complicated, but it is really well understood. So there are experts out there who can really guide us through this process and help us do it right. Yeah, we need to do something called whole house retrofit. And the government are obviously got this on their radar, with multiple consultations open at the moment about how we reach net zero with home heating. But they acknowledge that we can't do what Home Energy Scotland and so on have tried to do over the years in terms of small incremental improvements. The whole house retrofit is the way we've got to do it. And they've also said that they're going to back a new British standard called PAS 2035, which will control how it's done, how it's designed. And it's kind of like a quality control check. So, you know, a million miles from the guy who knock on your door selling you loft insulation, this is a controlled process that it also incorporates the idea of building passports. So you have, just like you have a service book for your car, a building passport would track all your changes over time. And when you sell that house, you know, it's going to add value to your house essentially, because all those things are captured in your building passport. So yeah, every home and community is different. So it's important that communities lead this effort. And that is also something that's been endorsed by government. So they recognise that that fact, and they are in their consultations, they are now looking to communities like ours. And I'll say that so far we've managed to have meetings with SCARF, who run the Home Energy Scotland programme for North East Scotland, and they have been very pleased by what we've told, what our approach essentially. And last week we had a meeting with Climate Ready Aberdeenshire, which is a small group set up by Aberdeenshire Council to advise the council on how to navigate their way forward with climate change and how to keep people informed. It's a small team of only 3 people, but we had a discussion with them, and yeah, they were really pleased to talk to us, totally approved of our approach, and they they can see us being a kind of pilot project. Yeah, at the moment, obviously this is a huge undertaking, and houses are obviously, we all own our own, most of us own our own houses, so we need to think about how, if we're needing to spend money on those houses, how are we going to fund it. So really, there's 2 big things to tackle, which is community engagement. We want to reach out to every single person in our community and understand what people's thoughts and feelings are about this, but also on a funding and technical side. I mean, the technical side, we kind of know where we need to go, but at the moment what I'm doing is talking to building retrofit experts, so companies like John Gilbert Architects in Glasgow have done a lot of deep retrofits to this new PAS 2035 standard. So I'm getting quotes from companies like that to find out what it would cost to start building basically a sort of home retrofits strategy for Davitt. So someone who would come and look at our typical properties and help us develop a strategy that we then work with everyone in the community to develop. So at the same time, I'm looking for funding on that. But the good news is there's loads of funding sources out there, so we should be able to get something quite easily to start us off. Ken, have I missed anything there? Okay. So yeah, community engagement is really the next, as I say, the next big step for us. So we're preparing a survey to send out to everyone, which yeah, we're going to hopefully be doing in the next few weeks. Yeah, we'd like as many people as possible to become members of Zero Carbon Davitt. So I know most of you are, but if you're a member of another group in Davitt, please, just spread the word and encourage people to sign up. There's no fee, nothing like that. We just would like to make people, well, we want everyone's opinion and everyone's views. It doesn't happen without everyone's input. So yeah, that kind of concludes this section. So Ken's going to start us on talking about smart homes, unless anyone would like to make a point or ask a question at this point. Willie, sorry, you got your hand up there.
Yeah, I was just wondering, the Scottish Government and the Conservatives are offering to build many houses in the next few years. How will they ensure that they reach this standard so that they don't end up with homes that have to be adapted at a later date?
Yeah, that's a really good point, Willie. So one of the government consultations that's just closed is called the New Build Heat Standard. And at first glance, it was quite disappointing, but I know a lot of various organisations have pitched in to say that Scotland should be adopting Passive House as the default building standard. and that includes, so there's an organisation called the Architects Climate Action Network. They've input, the Royal Corporation of Architects in Scotland have done the same thing. And the Scottish Climate Assembly, their recommendation was also that all new builds become passive house, which consume 90% less energy than most of our homes. Yeah, I also know that, well, also I think we should be trying to lobby this at a local level as well. It was put into legislation last year that Scotland would adopt local place plans. And in England, they have this already. It's called neighbourhood planning. But for anyone who's not familiar with the planning system in Scotland, there's different tiers. There's national planning framework, then there's regional planning framework. Sorry, I'm getting the names wrong here, someone will put me right. Then there's local development plans, and the idea was that local place plans would allow communities to have ownership over kind of, yeah, their community area. I know in England that is allowing, for example, neighbourhoods to say, so what neighbourhoods want has to be considered in a planning application. So it's not clear yet from Scottish Government what these local place plans will mean for us as a community, but and I think it will come through the Community Council, but I would like to think that we could say, we could maybe set some standards of our own for any new dwellings that happen in our community. You know, that would be amazing to say, you know, as a community, we've set an ambition of being carbon neutral by 2030, so don't go building any more waste heating houses, please. So yeah, if you know people in local governance, yeah, please raise it there as well.
Thank you for your comprehensive answer.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, you got a question?
Just to say, if you need a hand getting the survey plans out, I don't work on Thursdays and Fridays at the moment, so please, by all means, utilise my time.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Just adding to what Matt was saying there about the state of buildings. I mean, every building that's going up today will have to be retrofitted. You know, it's just the current regulations are not up to spec. So everything we're building today will have to be retrofitted, which is disappointing. I met a guy called Bob Edwards last weekend when we were out on the bikes, and he used to own Scotframe. And I challenged him. I said, well, why don't you do more when you were building these houses? And he said, well, the problem is it costs more. I said, but it's not much more, you know. He said, no, the real problem, he said, is the building surveyors, because if I build an energy efficient house, looks the same as the one next to it that's not energy efficient, then the building surveyor comes along, he puts a valuation on that house, and the two houses are identical in price. So there's no incentive for anybody to do this. And I thought that was really quite an interesting point.
Yeah, madness. Whereas actually analysis done by the Passive House Institute shows that on average, a passive house is 8% more expensive in its build cost, but that pays for itself. And over the lifetime of the building, it's actually between 2 and 5% cheaper.
Yeah, the other thing that Bob Edwards said is, when you go out and buy a car, one of the things you look at is how many miles per gallon you're going to get. And he says, why people don't do that for their houses just baffles me, because you should really know how much is it going to cost you to run the house in terms of your energy per year. But nobody does. He's right again.
Would you like to crack on with the next bit? Ken?
Right. Yep. Okay, fine. So Apologies from Keith Duncan, who was going to run this bit, but due to his COVID vaccination yesterday, he is not able to be with us this evening, poor lad. But at least his immune system is working anyway. So next slide, please, Matt. Yeah. So this is what we'd like to cover here just now is just to look at load controllers and flexible loads. And this is the sort of jargon that we've received really, but I'll try and go into in sort of pretty straightforward terms. So next slide, Matt, if we go load diverters. So this is a load diverter, and we've got solar panels on the roof of our house here, and I fitted this solar iBoost when we first had them going. And so what happens is when you generate electricity from the solar panels, it feeds, first of all, anything that's running in the house. But of course, you get most of your electricity during the day when you're maybe not using so much electricity. And so this thing's got clever little current transformer on it. And what it does is it knows which way the electricity is going. So if it's coming into the house, it doesn't switch on. But if it's going out, and I'm pumping electricity into the grid, then this thing switches on, and instead of it pumping it into the grid, it pumps it into my hot water tank. So really from about now until October, we don't really have to use any other form of heating our water other than the solar PV panels on the roof. You can see that I just took this picture tonight. So in the last 28 days, so during March, we've actually put 110 kilowatt hours into the tank, which is not enough for a whole family, a big family, but for the two of us, it's just fine, really. Next slide. Then this is another device which, when we all get into electric vehicles, is quite neat. It's a bit different to the plug-in that I've got for plugging up my electric car. What this one does is it works exactly the same way as the hot water tank. So if the sun is shining and your car's sitting outside and this is plugged in, what it does is it will just pick up on the power. But it's a little bit smarter than the thing I've got for the hot tank, because it will actually, you can program it so that if you're needing the car, then it'll use the most available electricity. Some of the more recent ones are also using battery backup, so that your solar energy goes into a battery, and then you can whenever you plug the car in, you can use that electricity. So it's quite a new thing, this, to be smart and talking to what you want, where the electricity is coming from, whether it's solar or whether it's coming from the batteries or whether it's coming from the mains. Next one. So this is an example of a smart meter, and what it does is you get these things fitted into the house. And I was a bit skeptical when they first came out. I thought, well, I've heard all these stories about people being able to monitor what's happening, and they can see when you're in the house or when you're not by the amount you're using, because what it does is it actually sends to the electricity supplier how much electricity you've used every half an hour. Now, I sort of overcame the concerns about this, because it is a pretty secure system, and gives them an idea of what you're using. But actually, on the way back, is that you can get tariffs that will give you cheaper electricity over each half-hour period in the day. So I think it's the next slide, Matt. Yeah. So this is this kind of gives you an idea of how we used to live, actually. But the white line at the top, if you follow that along, you'll see that around about 6 o'clock in the evening, there's a peak in demand. So this is off a countrywide view, but it's pretty typical of the average house. So we use a lot of electricity in the middle of the evening there, and then it sort of tails off until we get up in the morning and everybody goes and has their shower. Now, with people working at home, it has changed. There's still that little lump at tea time because everybody seems to like to eat about that time, but the second peak in the morning is much less than it used to be. Then underneath that white curve, you've got the just an example of in the sort of purple color there of when you're going to be generating your solar energy, and then the light blue gives you an idea of what the wind generation can do. So essentially, where we are is we've got an electricity demand with a hump in the middle of the day and less of a hump towards the end of the evening, but the demand, sorry, the supply is either going to depend on when the sun's shining or when the wind is blowing, and how much the wind blows and how long the sun shines, nobody can really predict that. So it's very, very difficult for us now, or for the generators to be able to predict when they need to turn up the supply of electricity. So what they are proposing is that in future we can help them by changing our demand. So instead of us having these peaks here, then what we can do is by using our own solar generation or by using batteries, we can get rid of that peak. So the next slide is a thing called, this is available at the moment from Octopus. It's called Agile Octopus. And I don't know if it's clear on your screen there, but there's an average unit rate down there of around about 8 pence a unit. And what they do is they will charge you through the day different rates of electricity. So this will show that it starts off and it's just below 6 pence a unit at midnight, and then it's round about there through the morning, and then as people get up about 8 o'clock, it comes up a wee bit, and then through the day drops down, and then there's the usual peak, and it jumps up at 1600, comes down around about it goes up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and down at about 7 o'clock in the evening. So there is an incentive not to use electricity at that time of the day, and the way around it is to have batteries or whatever means you can do, or just not do things at that time of day. But the problem with the Agile Octopus, when I went onto it in January, was that there'd been a real problem with prices of energy, and the whole thing had maxed out, and it was like 34 pence a kilowatt hour for 16 hours of the day. So I just jumped out of it again because I don't have any battery packs to smooth it out, and all I wanted to do was to not charge my car through the day, but we still cook our meals at that time of day. So if we go into the next one, I went on to this this alternative was Octopus Go, and so what they've done is they've just said, right, okay, and it's a bit like Economy 7 that we used to get, is where between midnight and 4:30 in the morning, it cost me 5 pence an hour for my electricity, and the rest of the day it's 14 pence. So this is actually from an actual bill I got for last month. So whether it's worth it or not, I don't know. It's for everybody to think about it, but you can see that I'm using electricity mostly at night now, and just a much smaller peak around about time when we put the oven on to cook evening meal. And so what I'm using at night there is I'm charging up the electric car, but I can only get 8 units out of it, as you can see there, in the 4 hours. So that cost me 40 pence, but it only gives me 20 miles. So, it's early days yet, but it just gives you an idea of what can be achieved with these smart tariffs. And it all happens automatically because this thing just switches on. We plug the car in when we come back from a drive, but it doesn't switch on until midnight. So I think that's the tariffs done. And Smart Hub, this is a hub that can be used in the house to control all sorts of things. So, for example, we put the dishwasher on at night now, but we've got to press a button to get the timer going. Whereas with, smart devices, or the Internet of Things, as they call it now, all these things will talk to this hub, and it'll switch on your washing machine at night, it'll switch on your dishwasher, make sure that all the units are, anything that shouldn't be on when you're not using it goes off. And it's just all programmed on your smartphone, and then you forget about it. You never look at it again because you just know that it's working away. And that saves all the messing about with the little bits and pieces we have to do at the moment. So I think that's it, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Ken.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're talking about smart homes, and really it's all about kind of control, and heating controls is another really important one. So I'm sure most people have got devices like these in their homes. Hopefully everyone's got a thermostat, even if it's a dumb one. It's like this one up here. It's good to have. Yeah, I mean, these devices are useful, but the modern tech we can get can do so much more. Just a couple of examples. The first one I've got here is Hive Thermostat, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard about. You've probably seen it advertised on TV. I know Keith has got one of these, and essentially it can just replace your existing thermostat. So it's a 5-minute job for an electrician to fit it, and then again it connects to your Wi-Fi, connects to your phone, and rather than having one temperature all day as you might have with a manual thermostat, you can program it to have different temperatures at different times. And if you're out, I think it can know that you're out by connecting with your phone if you choose to make that connection. So it gives you a lot more control over your heating system. Hive also do these Wi-Fi radiator valves. So obviously your thermostat is usually going to turn off your whole house, or in some houses you might have different zones. So in my house I've actually got 3 thermostats for the different zones. But if you wanted even more control than that, which I know probably a lot of people do want now that we're working from home a lot more, then these Wi-Fi radiator valves do exactly the same job, but obviously per individual radiator. And you wouldn't need to fit these to every radiator per se, but obviously the more you have, the more control you're going to have. So I know Keith uses this now, and naturally he's waking up and he needs the heating on because he's going up to his office, but he's able to basically turn the living room off, but keep his study on. So yeah, really good devices. And an example of another thermostat, learning thermostat, is the Nest thermostat, which these are significantly more expensive, but these are not just smart in the way they're connected, but these are actually smart in terms of how they operate. So it's what they call a learning thermostat. So I installed 3 of these to replace my previous thermostats. And when you first plug it in, you connect it. You can connect it to your phone. You can connect it to your Wi-Fi, and you put in your postcode. And from that, from your postcode, it obviously knows your location, and from that, it knows what the weather conditions are outside. Over the first month that you have it in your home, you manually turn the silver dial on the outside to turn the temperature up and down during the day. And then over the period of the first month, it essentially learns your habits, and it builds this schedule here. So this is my schedule, and it shows that the temperature comes on in the morning when we get up, and then it cools down for the rest of the day, and then it warmer again in the evening, and then cools down at night. So it's setting a schedule automatically, and you can see it's different at weekends because, you know, we stay up late on the weekends sometimes. And not only that, but it also learns how your heating system responds. So it learns how quickly your radiators take to warm up, and then it understands, once your radiators are hot, how quickly does the room warm up. So that means it can predict, if my schedule here says that I want the heating to come on at 6:30, it'll look at the outside temperature and see, you know, maybe it's 10 degrees already, so it knows it'll need to come on 20 minutes before 6:30 to be at the right temperature. But if it's -4 outside, it knows it'll have to come on an hour and a half earlier. So all those little tweaks allows it to use the absolute minimum energy to provide you with your indoor comfort. And so the little graph I've got on here on the right is my energy history. So in the app on the phone, you can see how much energy you've used, and you get a summary every month showing you. So it also kind of makes you conscious of what you're using as well. And in the world of kind of smart devices, if you have other Nest devices, then it can talk to those devices. So over on the left here, this is a Nest smoke alarm. And these are quite expensive as well. They're about £100 each, or maybe 120, sorry. And I've got a couple, but they essentially, the system, it always looks to see whether you're home, and it can do that either by the GPS location on your phone and whether you're at home through that, or little infrared sensors and dial here, and in the smoke detector, if you walk past one of them, it knows you're home as well. And so these devices communicate together to sort of do that. And if you've got a smart speaker, you can say, turn the heating up, and so on and so forth. So there's all that gimmicky stuff to go with it as well. But yeah, I mean, I live in a cold, drafty house, constantly trying to make improvements, but I bought these a number of years ago, and they paid for themselves within 6 months. So, you know, expensive, but well worth it. So I can highly recommend them. Yeah, so that's about all our content for this week. We didn't really want to add too much in case there were lots of questions. Hopefully that was helpful. I don't know. But yeah, has anyone got any questions or comments from anything we've spoken about tonight? Nick?
No, it reminded me of a saying from a film, which was, I'm sorry, Dave, I'm afraid I can't do that. Which if anyone recognizes that quote, about the technology getting slightly beyond itself. But hey ho, I've got an Alexa, so we have to live with this sort of thing.
Out of interest, has anyone got any of these smart thermostats in their house? Yeah, okay, some converted already, cool. Good stuff.
It was just a point on the smart meters. Since we've started discussions, we never had one for the house. We've got one installed at the shop now, and I thought, well, I'll have a chat with Octopus and see, thinking ahead for the nighttime tariffs and whatever else, with some things that we might progress with. And they can only give you those tariffs if you have a smart meter, and they can't tell you when they would possibly be able to install a smart meter because they're so far behind with their installs. So they reckon that if you talk to your current provider, you might score a smart meter earlier than you would with them. So if you're coming to the end of a contract have that discussion and maybe hit yourself with a flexible contract so you're not tied in for another period of time. Get your smart meter, bounce off and find the best tariff thereafter. But he didn't think they would fit a smart meter in 12 months. They're so busy. Mostly a fact because they didn't get in to do them for the past sort of 12 months very readily. So they're backlogged. But so yeah, we're investigating that. And there's not really people do them independently. They're all kind of attached to the providers. So you can't really speed that through. But,
yeah, it is an issue. We had ours installed within a month of asking, but 3 months later it's still not working. So it'll happen. Yeah. Cool. Sorry, Willie. Yeah.
Why do you need more than one Nest thermostat? Is that because the house is bigger? Or?
Yeah. So in my situation, the house has got 3 floors, and so when I put the plumbing system in, I deliberately broke it into sections so I didn't have to heat the whole house at once.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, you can retrofit that in some instances, but yeah. Sorry, Nick.
Willie, we've got to have 10 thermostats in our house. So depending on the way your heating works, with the underfloor heating, it's all zoned. So if you build that properly, each zone is controlled by a thermostat. Therefore, it uses and heats up the water in your floor as and when you need it, or equally electric. It doesn't matter, but it switches on and off areas. So if you can break it down more, so like Keith's Hive ones that are more controllable than walking around and turning them up and down or whatever, it just means you don't have to heat spaces that you're not using so much, or you can quickly change that just to make it a little bit more efficient. But yeah, the old way was just one thermostat in the house, and my mum and dad's thermostat was located in their kitchen, which meant their thermostat was turned up really high to heat the cold part of their house, because the kitchen thermostat had to be up to compensate for the cooking and the hot living, So
yeah.
When the radiators up, and they had to turn their kitchen radiator down, but then when it was cold, it just doesn't work. It's too clunky. So the more you can have in, the heating should be.
That's another good thing about the Nest and the Hive as well, is that they're actually wireless, so you can put them in another room in the best room for you. So yeah.
Yeah, I just fitted a Nest one in Mum and Dad's to replace. Now they had a third-party system installed. This is where tech gets a bit clunky, and it was a company that put in an early sort of heat control for their central heating. It knew you were in or out the house. They installed a push button at the door as well, so when you were leaving, you could just hit it and it would know that you were out of the house. It had a monitor in there for your hot water, so you could kind of more easily schedule it and learn about it. And a really simple thermostat on the wall gave up, but the company is bust and the system is longer of use. So we bought a Nest thermostat for their heating, and it's working really well. Yeah.
On the subject of smart meters and tariffs, Brian, you're another electric car owner. Have you had much luck with decent tariffs or anything? Or
no, I'm stuck in. Well, I went with SSC, which was, I think it's called Drive and Go, for a year, but they couldn't get me the smart meter in order for me to take advantage of the nighttime charging. And ironically, I've just switched over to Octopus on the promise of a smart meter, and exactly the same as was just recounted. They're saying we just can't get your smart meter just now. So I was actually thinking about maybe just independently getting a smart meter fitted. I didn't realize that maybe Octopus would accept a third-party smart meter as long as it was maybe to a certain standard. So I might try and do that. Because yeah, 2 electric cars now, and I'm getting a decent tariff from Octopus, better than SSE, but it's not what it could be with a nighttime charging. So the other interesting thing there is I actually do have a Zappi 2 charger in the garage, which is the one that can work with solar panels. But talking to solar panel installers, they always seem to be, if you don't have perfect sunlight, they seem to be a little bit reluctant to, i.e. it's kind of not worth your while kind of thing. But I think I'll still go ahead with that, because I did put it in place. So when you've got a sunny day, you can just plug your car in and charge it, through the Zappi charger using the sunny weather. So yeah, I actually think demand is going way beyond supply at the moment on smart meters and things. There's a really interesting tonight. I think the conversation about the car and fuel consumption is everybody understands your fuel consumption at the cost of petrol. People get very confused very quickly on the kilowatt hours utilization of a house. And so that's why builders have got away with it for years, because you need to know what the formulas are to work out the cost of things. And so people don't buy houses based on the house's running costs. It's really weird, because they should do. And so I think that's a big mindset that everybody's got. I certainly didn't do that when I bought this house. That's for sure. And so,
it says regretfully.
Yeah, regretfully. So this retrofitting is a very interesting angle, I think, and I think something that people are going to get more and more interested in, how you can improve the thermal efficiency of old houses and drafty houses.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, Mel.
Yeah, hi folks. Just on the subject of smart meters, so I'm with Bulb, and out of interest, I thought I would go and try and book an appointment while we're in this meeting, and there aren't any available. So if anyone's on Bulb, demand is high, all appointments in your area are booked. We add new appointment slots every day, check back later. So if anyone can get a smart meter anywhere, please share with the page.
Grand, yeah, thanks for that, Mel. I struggle. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, sorry, interesting that about Bulb, because Octopus told me that they didn't have any slots for smart meters and suggested that I got Bulb to fit the smart meter before I left them. But obviously that doesn't work anymore, sorry.
Mm-hmm. Has anybody had a third-party smart meter fitted?
No, but it would be worth investigating, but because they're all universal now. There was such a scandal when they weren't interchangeable. It's a thing called SMETS 2 is what you're after, SMETS 2, SMETS 2 type meter, and I don't know where you would get that from. Just Google and see if it is available. But
the one that was installed in the shop recently was a third-party installer that came and put it in. So it wasn't like the Scottish, is it SSE we were at the shop? I can't remember.
Yeah, ours was a Siemens van turned up.
But it was just a facilities provider guy, that young electrician guy that came put it in. He was done in 40 minutes, so I can't see why it's not practical. And we've got a lad in the village who is a good electrician who works through the day and is available on Saturdays for electrical work. So can't see why he wouldn't be able to slot them in either. So we'll just
if anybody finds one, tell us and we'll buy a job lot and get him to do them all on one Saturday.
Yeah, it's got to be a market.
Buy them on Alibaba maybe, but we should.
Alibaba.
Yeah, great. Well, just I don't know if there's anyone else got any other sort of questions or points to raise, but thinking ahead, we had a sort of this program of 3 or 4 different topics to cover, and we've kind of come to the end of that short program of events, if you like. So, we've got this questionnaire going out soon, but I'd really like to hear from people as to maybe what they'd like to know more of. you know, I mean, group chats on their own can be useful, but are there particular topics that people would like to hear about? I know that, well, Mary, you mentioned previously that we should definitely be talking a bit more about the why we need to change and adapt. So I'd like to make that part of the programme.
By the way, sorry I was late, I had a Holy Week thing. Just on the why, it was just I'd been speaking to Matt, because I think it's quite difficult sometimes, so certain people have sort of principles of no, we have to reduce, but it's to do with the effects. The immediate effects are not so obvious here, but obviously are in other parts of the world. And it just happens through Christian Aid and things. I mean, in the past 6 weeks, I mean, I think I've, been party to conferences with people speaking from Nicaragua about the implications, and also a whole lot of other places in different corners of the world. And I was saying to Matt, as something, as a one-off, I realise, the focus of this group is on, what we can do, and on the local thing. But I do think as a motivating factor, it's quite important sometimes to think about the why. And I was pointing out that I don't know if people have seen the Christian Aid advertisements on the television, but Christian Aid, one of their main strands is climate change. So you do get some very good material, and okay, it happens to be a Christian motivated charity, but of course they help anybody and everybody, and they work with local partners, whether absolutely regardless of faith or no faith or whatever. So basically, I would have access to some of that sort of material. I'm also in touch with other groups. I was at another conference about disinvestment, and it had it was a lot of, obviously, from my perspective, there were quite a lot of Christian groups, but there were also Friends of the Earth was in that conference as well. So I'm just saying, I do think as a one-off, every now and again, even if people want to focus on, cars and how to change houses and things, I think a bit of the sort of whys. And actually, I don't know if you saw the other night, I actually think I got a critical phone call, so I couldn't watch it myself. But there was a very interesting program that was actually saying about the why of having to do something about climate change. And it was actually talking about Scotland, and it was talking about Britain anyway, and it was talking about flooding, but I'm afraid I couldn't actually watch it. But it was talking about flooding, and that was quite interesting. So I thought that was something else, that's bringing it more to home, you see where I'm coming from. I just think
absolutely, Mary, I totally agree. That program was on BBC One, actually. A few of us watched it, and it was mostly based in our area, so it was interesting. But thank you for that.
But sorry, I know, and I would offer to help with that, obviously.
Thank you.
Because I'm not so good on the techno. I was going to say I'm impressed with the tech. Obviously I don't have the technological information, so I acknowledge, and I sort of need that, so we've all got something to contribute, but anyway, I don't want to
absolutely
jump in too much, but
there are plenty of people in the village who do understand all that tech, so we should be there to support
yes, which is good. Good for all of us. But anyway, sorry, I don't want to go on, but that's just what I spoke to Matt about, and I think what I'm thinking of in particular is, you people, I've seen the same people in the other meeting, I was at recently. But obviously that's a level of commitment. But I'm thinking the whys might actually attract a different group of people to get interested. Do you see what I mean? I don't know. But and then once they got interested, once they'd been, well, I suppose, shocked into, sorry, I'm putting it simplistically, but you see what I mean. Once people had been reminded of some of this stuff, then they might be more inclined to do what they could.
And we need everyone's involvement in the whole community, and some people are probably not going to care much about some of these issues, actually. So
but I think what I'm also saying is that there are some very good people. Well, these things I'm at that have Friends of the Earth or whoever, all these different groups. There are people who could really help us, I think, in a one-off thing about that. So
I think the survey will highlight that kind of thing.
Yes.
and maybe engage more people, because
it's very good. Yes,
you know, it's got a lot of tiers in it, so hopefully that'll get, and also it's got a feedback, you know, so we'll be able to get some
So what I'll just laughing because you've obviously all heard, but I'll put that comment down in the survey, do you know, so it gets, I'll see what I mean.
Yep.
So it gets counted in.
Absolutely.
I needn't go on about it because I've spoken about it at length, but I'll put a comment in, and then that means that's, you know.
Yes, that's really good. Thanks, Mary. One of the things that was picked up in that is BBC Scotland. What's it called? Diverters. I can't remember. It's still on iPlayer. You can get it there. And it was talking about looking at the land around Aberdeenshire, and I think one of the areas, if anybody can suggest any farmers that would be interested in sort of joining us in this group, because I just feel they're getting a bad press at the moment and are maybe just keeping us at arm's length, because the only thing you hear about agriculture is that there's lots of methane and you've got to stop eating red meat. Now that's maybe what has to happen, but I think on the other hand, the farmers, their carbon footprint's probably less than most of us, because they've got stuff growing on their ground that is eating up carbon, but there are ways in which they could maybe improve that. There are little corners of lots of fields that are a bit boggy, and rather than just leaving them waste, why don't we help them plant them up with moss, which is supposed to be better than trees at sucking out carbon out of the atmosphere? And it just would be good to have that little bit of input as well. So if anybody knows of any tame-friendly farmers, let us know.
Thanks. Willie just raised a couple of points in the chat there about climate literacy. Do you want to expand on that at all, Willie? Willie McCall?
Yeah, just to say that, on the back of Mary's comments, climate literacy is a phrase we'll hear more of, and she's right, it's important that we can understand the whys of it. And I think having a good, Matt did some really, good pieces at the beginning in terms of what the issues were, but we are sometimes far removed from how that feels and impacts us day to day. So it is important, and I think you had that on your list, Matt, and also around about donut economics. And well, there are some big ambitions for zero carbon deviate. There are some other things that we've thought about doing, and how you can create more of a circular economy, and perhaps upcycling stuff as well. So you talked before about and sort of making people more familiar with the kind of concept of donut economics as well. So I think that those are things that we can add to. I've already done the climate literacy course, so we've got plenty of material as well to do that. It's trying to find the right time, and I think it was wise to kind of try the evening slot just now, especially as we head towards summer too.
Yeah, thanks, Willie. So that neatly leads me on actually to just another quick point I'll make about a meeting we went to this week. Ken and I went to a presentation by Cornwall Council on the event was called Planning for Climate Emergencies, and they have basically been trying to embrace donut economics, and I guess a lot of people maybe haven't heard of that term, but there's a book which I just flashed up there by Kate Raworth called Donut Economics, and I think it'd be great to have a session on that. It talks about basically having a social foundation for humanity where the basic needs of everyone are provided, but having an ecological ceiling that isn't exceeded. And there's some good research that shows where we sit in the UK in places we fall short on, like education and equality, and then the boundaries that we exceed, which not only include sort of carbon emissions, but nitrogen and phosphorus use in this country is 7 or 8 times more than it should be. So I'd be pretty confident in getting a guest speaker to come and talk about that, which would be good. But what Cornwall had done had made their own version of the donut, and used it as a kind of tool for evaluating projects. And this is the council. I mean, this is amazing. This is happening in Cornwall Council, where they have a board of, no, that's the wrong word, but they're kind of
call themselves a cabinet, don't they?
That's right. Yeah. They're given these kind of donuts for each project. So the donut has all the categories around it, and then all the each category is like color coded. So if it's red, it means there's it's bad for that category. And of course, no project is perfect. So you can see this one's got a balance of greens and yellows and stuff. So a really useful tool that I think we're going to try and talk to the council about using, and perhaps we can adopt ourselves. But yeah,
that'd be a good one for when the shop opens again, Karen, and we can get real donuts as well.
Another topic that just comes to mind is so I also help run the Student Climate Action Group at uni and at RGU, and we're running a climate anxiety event in a couple of weeks. So this is now a kind of new term that climate psychologists now exist who describe all this. And I don't know if anyone, I know I've kind of suffered with it in a way, you know, being anxious about the situation, and feeling a bit helpless about it. So if there's appeal for that kind of thing as well, then I think I can organise a guest speaker on that. I don't know if anyone's kids are sort of maybe prone to that or whatever, but yeah. Okay.
I can frame it a little slightly different way, and I wonder if anyone else can relate to it. I love watching David Attenborough, but I've stopped watching David Attenborough recently because he's very good at getting the point across about how tricky things are going forward and how bad it is for so many species. I find it a bit overwhelming. So I actually, even though I love his presenting and all the amazing work and footage they've got, I stopped watching it because I can't really, I don't want to take on any more. I know how shitty it all is, and I know how much we need to do. I want us to just get doing it, but there's so many more people that are still lagging behind all of us, that it's still so prevalent in social media and his amazing documentaries. I actually have kind of disengaged from it because I just don't want to see more of it because it's making me anxious, like you're saying. Yeah. So I wonder if anyone else related to that, because that's the little niche bit for me. Is like I like David Attenborough.
I think you're totally correct in the fact that you know you're going to get the last 10 minutes of the David Attenborough thing, and it's going to really bum you out for the rest of the night. But I kind of make myself watch it, and I think this is, you know, I'm a newbie to the group, and I think this is why I really like the cut of the jib of this group, because it's think global but act local. You know, that's always the phrase, that if you can do something locally, if it's getting a bog in the right place, or thinking about wind turbines, or, you know, if you can afford to buy an electric car, because there's one stat that shocked me about 5 years ago, and one car emits 3 tons of CO2. One car, 1 year, 3 tons of CO2, and it's like, that's horrific, you know. And so I think I totally sympathize with you, because I get those same fears that, you know, it's all pointless, you know, so why are we trying? But if rich societies can afford to do things sooner and quicker, and that can filter through to the rest of society, then maybe that's what we should just try and do. And I think action always helps you feel a bit better. So if you can do small things in the right way, I think that's the right thing to do, the right actions to take.
Yeah.
Just to pick up on that, I mean, there's a lot the government and nations have to do, but at the same token, there's a lot we can do in communities. And I think Matt and others were at the meeting the other night with the Aberdeenshire group, they saw what we could do as a community together, and I think what was they were quite impressed at was the skills that we hold within the village and the access to different parts, all the knowledge that we need. But it is important as well not to kind of be the kind of conduit of fear and despair, but more of hope and kind of and help. And I think that's also where we've kind of focused our effort, or want to focus our efforts as we move forward too.
But also the simplicity of the thing that every little bit counts. Every small action counts, you know what I mean? That seems to be pretty key, you know, that as in a whole lot of things.
And people forget that, that if they fall into despair, they quickly forget that. Yeah.
Yes, and I understand.
There was an interesting statistic that keeps sort of popping up about it's the world's richest 1% cause double the CO2 emissions of the 50% of the rest of the population. You know, we've got lots of ways that we can, because, you know, as a slice of the pie, it's not just talking about those with their private plane, it's that part of the world that can afford and do things that they maybe shouldn't be doing, whereas there's plenty of people who live a simple life who don't have that same impact. So yeah, doing a local thing in a reasonably wealthy part of the world, we can make a big difference, you know. So have to make a big change.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's that statistic from Kevin Anderson, isn't there? If the UK's top 10% richest dropped their carbon emissions to the EU average, the UK's carbon footprint would drop by 1/3. I mean, it's just.
Could you say that again? Sorry.
Yeah, if the top 10% high earners in the UK had the same carbon footprint as the EU average, so if they just came down to the rest of us, the UK's footprint would drop by 30%.
Yes.
Yeah, I was an observer for the Scotland's Climate Assembly, and we had along a group of, it was called the Children's Parliament, but it's all Scottish children, and they were told that same statistic, and they were told that this is about 400 people. And one of the kids said, well, if there's only 400 of them, why don't we just have a Zoom meeting like this and we can speak to them and sort it out? Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, brilliant.
I hope they're getting an invite.
All right. Sorry. Anyone else got a... Willie, did you have something? No. Well, we'll call it to a close, shall we? We're at 9:30 almost. So yeah, thanks very much everyone for coming along, and thanks for the ideas. So yeah, do people think a weekday evening works pretty well?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think this time is quite good as well, because it gets all the early evening activities out of the way, so you can. It's a good time.
Okay.
Yeah. Perfect. Good.
Great. Thanks. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Paul. Yeah. Okay. So we'll stick with that in the next sessions, and we'll.
So I was just going to say, I have a huge number of evening meetings, so just my apologies. You know, I can catch up after, but it's just a fact.
Yeah. Thanks for coming along, though, Mary. Thanks for popping in at the end there. Very well. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, I just thought I would see to see how you were doing. But what I'm saying behind you. But if you're going to evening meetings, it's just a fact that because we work with volunteers, you can see how it just is inevitable that I'm often busy in the evening.
Good.
Thanks for coming along. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Super.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks all.
Thank you. Bye.
Matt, I was just going to ask, is it possible maybe to keep to a mix that might suit people, because I guess some people won't always be able to make evening sessions, so maybe a mix still works. Just I guess it's something that you could put out on the page, maybe to
some Saturdays and some weekdays, and you mean like that?
Or get wider feedback, to see what would work, whether it's
for a Saturday, haven't we? There's still one for the 12th of April. The next one is still booked for the Saturday.
Is it?
Yeah, because I had a look.
12th of April.
One. 10th or
Okay, I don't know. I'll have a look, but yeah, fair point. Yeah, I did do a poll on the Facebook group before, but it didn't yield much results. So it's just a matter of trying to get as much engagement as possible. So in fact, I think let's maybe put this on the questionnaire as well, and try and just talk to people and find out.
Yeah.
Some of the topics, maybe if, as it's springtime, although next week looks like it's going to be midwinter again, but you'll need your hat, Matt, next week. But if we're going to do some of the sort of greener, gardeny sort of topics, that might work well for a mixed group of people on a weekend or whatever as well, rather than maybe the more technological discussions. Maybe that might
Yeah,
work.
I mean, let's hope we can actually have a physical meeting, even if it is outdoors. Would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Good.
next event was climate literacy and personal actions
All
on
right.
the 5th of April.
Okay. Cool.
So I think that, yeah, that's more a low level one. So that's probably, I don't know if that's 9:30 on the Saturday. So I don't know whether we want to change that or not.
Okay, it's a couple of weeks away. We
Yeah.
can change it if need be. Yeah.
Cool.
Good.
Great. Thanks for that.
Okay.
Thanks, Sarah. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Cheers, folks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, all right.
Yo. Hey, I'm just thinking